Talk about Foot in the Grave by Zachary and Joshua Forbes. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is going to be a quick review for Foot in the Grave by Zachary and Joshua Forbes. You can check the cover out up there. Before we jump into the review today, make sure to check in the description box down below for links to my social media and Discord, should you want to come along for the ride. Now, I will preface this by saying Foot in the Grave is book 2 of the Three Rivers Plague series, so there may be mild spoilers for the first book. If you haven't read Three Rivers Plague, I would encourage you to go and do that before you jump into this video. I will try and make the spoilers minimal as we go through, but in terms of the storyline and the progression, I'll probably be talking a little bit about that. Now, this is also the first review that I have done unscripted. I'm trying something different to just go with vibes and thoughts and feelings, and if it's super rambly, please let me know if you want me to go back to a scripted review. But I do still want to be trying to get a review out each and every month. Scripting it, making sure it goes up on the Before We Go blog, and then doing the video takes a lot longer than just some general thoughts about what I feel about a certain book. And we also want to be promoting indie and good indie books. Let's jump into it. Foot in the Grave follows on from Three Rivers Plague. We are following a continuation of Thomas's story. Thomas is a ex-band member, and basically the end of the world happens. In Three Rivers Plague, he plays a show, they see a ship come overhead, and a whole bunch of green mist comes down, and all of a sudden people are turning into zombie-like creatures called hunches. We go through quite a lot in the Three Rivers Plague to get to the point where we are now in Foot in the Grave. Foot in the Grave sees us starting on ground in like a compound situation where the survivors of the Three Rivers Plague have essentially built a base, and they're all sort of living communally and trying to get through this dystopian wasteland that has become of the world, and they are situated in New York. The biggest issue that they have right now is food. And Thomas is going through a lot of emotional turmoil with the events that have happened. A lot of people have been lost. He's lost a lot of friends. He's dealing with this internal struggle of his girlfriend needing his emotional capacity, but just not having that emotional capacity to give, and sort of avoiding her and putting himself into a lot of dangerous situations. In Foot in the Grave, he sees himself going on expeditions to find food to try and help these people survive. We also see some really cool things like nuclear waste plant. Is that what it was? There was some sort of energy facility that they were working in to try and power up the stations that they were in. So a lot of these back and forths were happening in Foot in the Grave. We go to, there's like a rival, I guess, gang. So part of this story is it's very mafia-esque. So if you think of, let's say, The Walking Dead crossed with something like The Sopranos, you have Foot in the Grave. So we're dealing with this zombie dystopian apocalypse. It's terrifying. The hunters are terrifying. There's a lot of action that happens in this book, but we're also dealing with the internal politics of like a underbelly of the US. So we've got two conflicting sides, and they're like taking each other out in the midst of a zombie apocalypse. It is insane. And Thomas is in the middle of that. And he's like, I need to go to the other side to try and find food. And also we have a inoculation that they don't have, and trying to deal with a lot of the complexities there. Inside of this story, we find out that a kid has been captured, and there is a wild game of basically if you kill someone, you are now not on the list to be eaten, from the side of the story which has, dabbled a little bit in cannibalism. It's insane, but it's insane in a good way. This book is definitely the bookish popcorn that I needed at the time. People think of series very fondly where they're like, I just need to be entertained, and the Three Rivers Plague series is that for me, and Foot in the Grave was no different. Some of the criticisms I had for Foot in the Grave have been looked at here in terms of things like character development. So we get a lot more of our character. Thomas, I would say probably not a lot of the others for me personally, but the amount of work that happened with the main character made me really feel for him a lot more as he was going through the things he was on the page. This book felt very much like a season 2, where in book 1 you've got sort of, I guess, 1 or 2 locations, you've got a fairly small budget, but you're doing your best with it. And I think it did do that. It really got me hooked into wanting to carry on to what I would call season 2 with Foot in the Grave. This had a bigger budget. We had more action. We had more hunches. The pacing was phenomenal in this book. I very rarely picked up this book saying, I'm going to read a chapter and then not have read 10, because the amount of hooks at the end of these short, sharp chapters was so good. And it was just like, oh, damn, another one. And then all of a sudden an hour would go by and I would be 10 chapters in. There were things that I really, really love about this series. One is the episodic storytelling. So the book is broken down into episodes. It very much felt like a TV show where you're getting different perspectives each time you change. So we would be focused on one compound and they would be focused on another compound, or would be focused on a character that was going through their particular arc, and so on and so forth. And I really enjoyed that aspect. Something else I liked here is the skill set behind the action scenes has amped up. There were horrific scenes in the first book, and there were some very sort of gut-punching horrific scenes in the second book. In the first book, we relied a lot on the hunches to bring the scare factor. In book 2, we rely also on the emotional impact. So while my criticisms around characters and not being able to relate to some of the characters in here, some of the scenes that were written themselves were written so well that in the moment you did care about those characters. There was one scene here in particular where there was water rising and like a kid was chained to something, and like Thomas was trying to get him out, and he's like, we've got to get this water to rise, it's the only chance we're going to be able to get out the top. And there was like a moment in there where I had to put the book in timeout because it was horrific. So the hunters were cool. The emotional impact of certain scenes was really cool. There was a part at the end of this book which did like get me in the, like, it felt like a gut punch. So there's definitely enhancement from book 1 in this one. I really enjoyed watching the brothers. So Zachary and Joshua Forbes are brothers. They're co-authors in this series. Being able to see how much their writing style has grown, in particular how much more seamlessly it seems that they're writing together, is coming in. There's a novella that just came out, which I think is a bit more based on like the gang war, the mafia-esque style storytelling, which I'll check out hopefully sometime soon. And I'm just really excited to see where these lads go. And, you know, they're young, they're coming into the scene, they're writing together, passion projects as siblings, and I can just feel that passion come through the books. I think that's really, really neat. I don't know if this interview, I don't know if this review was any good, whether it's just rambly, just me talking pure vibes about books. Let me know if you like this format, or if you prefer me to go back to scripting, because I do articulate my thoughts better written. But I also just thought that maybe reviews are a little bit fun and a little bit wild, and go, yeah, I'm reading that book on pure vibes, which is what I did. I reached out for this book purely on vibes and trusting that Zachary and Joshua Forbes would entertain me, and they absolutely did. Happened. I forgot my point because I'm rambling. That was a review of Foot in the Grave, I think. Are you going to pick this one up? How are you going to pick up Three Rivers Plague? Please do. Let's talk about it. If you like the content, give one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will, and I will catch you in the next video. Ciao.